All the chocolate cravings you've ever had are satisfied right here. Oh, they smell so good. It has this decadent texture. In this chapter, I'm gonna teach you how to make a chocolate fudgy brownie-like cookie. It's all about the chocolate and the butter and that ooey gooey loveliness that you get out of a brownie, but in a cookie. So let's get going. For our chocolate brownie-like cookie, we're gonna need all-purpose flour, cocoa powder, kosher salt, butter, bittersweet chocolate, eggs, sugar, and vanilla extract. I need to get my flour all measured out. Of course, I'm using my scale. I love my scale. It might be my favorite piece of equipment because it's all about consistency. Every time I make these, it'll be the same when I use a scale. We're going to need 200 grams of flour or 1.5 cups. Now I need to measure my cocoa powder. And instead of using a separate bowl, I'm gonna measure it right into the flour because they're gonna get whisked together anyway. What I wanna do is measure the cocoa powder right into a fine mesh sieve because cocoa powder tends to be lumpy. And so I wanna make sure all of those lumps are worked out. So I have to tear this or zero out the scale, and then I can just measure that. So 45 grams of cocoa. It's quite a bit of cocoa, like a half cup of cocoa. So now I can just sift the cocoa right into the flour, get out any lumps, and now I need to measure out my sugar. Lots of sugar in this one because we have so much cocoa, so much dark chocolate. It's gonna balance out the flavor. And I need 600 grams or 3 cups of sugar for this. Here we go. Oh, perfect. Next thing that I wanna do is melt my pound of butter with my chocolate. This is a really deep, rich, dark chocolate. So first, what I'm gonna do is chop the chocolate up a little bit because that's just gonna speed up the melting. I like to use the serrated knife whenever I'm chopping chocolate. This can be larger chunks. And then we have the butter. You can use any butter that you usually do, but this is one place that you could experiment with maybe using a European style butter, the ones that have a slightly higher fat content. And that's just gonna make these even richer and even fudgier. So experiment with the ingredients and you'll come up with different brownie cookies. So into a pan, I need to heat up and melt my butter. And I'll put that on. You just want this to be on like a medium-low heat. Chocolate actually has a really low melting point, and so you'll be surprised how quickly the chocolate melts into the butter. You can see it's already melting. You do want to stir it the whole time because chocolate is kind of sensitive. You don't want to put it on a high heat. Otherwise, it can seize, which means that it gets hard in there. Actually, it's just burning the chocolate. It'll be really bitter. So you want to make sure that you're gently cooking it and stirring it the whole time. But look at that. This was just a couple minutes and it's already so smooth and absolutely beautiful. In order to put this into the recipe, it needs to cool off a little bit. I'm gonna pour this into a bowl so that it cools down a little bit faster. Okay, that's a lot of chocolate and a lot of butter for one batch of cookies. So that's cooling. Now I need to whip up my eggs. I have 6 whole eggs. For this recipe, it doesn't matter if they've come straight out of the refrigerator. We're gonna use our whisk attachment and get tons of air in there. We're gonna whisk these for about 30 seconds just to incorporate all of the whites and the yolks and get it into one uniform mixture. Once it's all uniform, I can start adding my sugar and just drizzle that in. And once I have all of my sugar in the bowl, I'm gonna whip that up to high and incorporate a ton of air into the eggs. And this is what's gonna act as my leavener. You'll notice that I didn't have any baking powder or baking soda in this recipe. All of the rise in these cookies comes from the air that's being whipped into the eggs. So 5 minutes they need to whip to really get a ton of air in there. And then we can add our chocolate. Okay, look at that. Look at the color of that. I have to say, it never ceases to amaze me that you can add raw eggs and sugar together and it just completely changes in its texture, everything about it when you just whip air into it. Look at that, it's fantastic. What I wanna do now is add my chocolate and butter to the mix. Because I poured it into a bowl, it cooled off a little bit. It's still quite warm, but it's not so hot that I can't add it. And into the bowl we go. Look at that. And I wanna scrape out every tiny little bit of that chocolate and make sure it gets down in there, because that's the flavor bomb right there. While that's going, just on very low speed, I want to add my pinch of salt to this. I'm gonna add my vanilla to this mix over here. Again, vanilla, I add it to everything. Absolutely everything. I make my own vanilla. You can use just pure vanilla that you buy at the store. But vanilla is just one of those base flavors that just makes everything else taste good. And then I'm just gonna whisk this together until it's uniform. Whoop. I have to say, I am not the neatest baker, so there is always a bit of splattering going on. But it's just a well-lived-in kitchen when you have splatters of chocolate. It could be worse. So the ratio of the chocolate and the butter and all of the eggs to the flour, there's like not that much flour because I want that super fudgy texture on the inside. I'm just mixing this together until it's all incorporated. And what I might have to do is finish this off with my rubber spatula. Look at that, it looks so good. It almost looks like cake batter. But as that butter and chocolate starts to cool off, it's going to get firmer and you will be able to scoop these like a cookie. But we need to let this sit until you can scoop it. I wanna make sure all of that butter, all of the eggs, all of the chocolate are all combined. And then I'm just gonna let this sit right in the bowl until it is scoopable. Depending on how warm your chocolate and butter mixture is, that can take anywhere from 10 minutes to like a half an hour to really set up properly. So while that's cooling off a little bit, I think I will clean up some of this mess. Our cookie brownie batter is set up, so now we can scoop it. This time I'm gonna bake it on a Silpat, and that is a silicone mat that you can bake on. And the thing that's nice about this is, one, you can just wash them, so you're not throwing anything away, but also it's such a smooth surface that things spread on them. And I want these to spread out a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit. So I have my super chocolatey batter, and now it's nice and thick. It's not gonna be solid, but it's gonna keep its shape. Because we whipped all of that air into the eggs, they're gonna have a nice rise to it. We also added the flour to it to give it some structure, and that's what's gonna prevent all of that butter and chocolate from spreading all over our pan. So I can put them kind of next to each other, maybe like 1.5 to 2 inches between them. I like mine to have that like crusty outside and then fudgy on the inside. So I like to freeze them first and then bake them. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pop this into the freezer, let them set about 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna bake them. So they are frozen solid. It really doesn't take that long because of all that butter. The butter just wants to solidify super quick. So I'm putting them in a preheated oven, 350 degrees. I want that outside to bake, but I want the inside to stay soft and ooey gooey, just like a brownie. So we'll come back in about 12 minutes and take a look. In the meantime, while those are baking, I'm gonna scoop the rest of these and put them all in the freezer for the next time I want cookies. If I'm mixing up a big batch of these, I might as well save some for a rainy day. Okay, I can smell the chocolate. It's like wafting throughout the house. They're gonna have that cakey bit on the edge that I wanted, but still be fudgy and delicious and ooey gooey on the inside. I don't want them to bake anymore because I don't want them to set on the inside. So I'm going to take them off of the Silpat and put them onto a cooling rack. Oh, they smell so good. And they're nice and shiny on the top. They're probably like molten lava inside, but I have to just break into one of them and see. Look at that, fudgy. Oh, so good. Oh. That's crazy. Everything I love about brownies and cookies in one. It's cakey on the outside, but it's still rich and gooey on the inside, just like you want a brownie. In this chapter, we learned how to make decadent, ooey gooey, rich, chocolatey, brownie-like cookies. We got there by whipping eggs with sugar so that we had this light texture, but then we added all of this butter and chocolate, and we just held them together with just the littlest, tiniest bit of flour so that they wouldn't spread all over the oven. And the result is my perfect brownie, but in a cookie. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll make them. I can't wait to see what you're creating, and thanks for joining me.